First of all, thank you very much, everyone, for joining another SAS User Group UK and Ireland webinar. Today, we have a pleasure having Dirk with us. Dirk is probably one of the most frequent visitors on our user group, and you also presented quite a few times. You have, I would say, was it about 17 years of experience working with SAS?
Yeah, it's close to that. Yes, because it was actually on and off switch between SAS and other things. I'm not so sure how many years it is in total.
But yeah, very, very experienced and also very active participant of our user group with experience in insurance and banking and public sector in Belgium, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. So without further ado, Dirk, over to you.
Okay, so I'll tell you something about actually filtering in SAS Visual Analytics, and we will go beyond normal filtering, exploring complex structures of data using a combination of filtering within a report and row-level security. Before I go to the application, I will explain you the context in which it is built. Then I'll tell you something about filtering in Visual Analytics, which most of you will know, I suppose. Then we will have a first example. Filtering complex hierarchies, so drilling down in complex hierarchies. Next one will be including row-level security and will personalize reports. And then I'll have a short discussion of a bug we encountered in SDK when including a report in an application that is as such not a SAS application, and then there will be some time for questions. So the context, my employer is TR Plus, but I'm working at the Belgian Finance Administration. I started in this position a year and a half ago. Before that, I was developing in Data Integration Studio and in Visual Analytics based on the laser architecture. And I've done that 4 years. And before that, I was most of the time a SAS base developer, sometimes other things with and without SAS. And that's me. About the organization, so in SAS in our organization, so at the Finance Administration of Belgium, we are using Visual Analytics based on a CAS server, using VIYA 3.5, and in fact, actually, that's not so long that we are using that. But our data warehouse is still in SAS 9, using many libraries based on DB2, but also SAS-based libraries and others. What I'm going to explain you has started with a project where we made a report on the in-basket of our tax agents. So the people actually talking to the taxpayers, these agents see their own inbox, but managers see actually the inbox and the throughput of all the people they manage. And managers, the structure of management is quite complex. Actually, people can combine responsibilities. We have also the concept of adjuncts, so that have access to everything the managers has access to. And then finally, this report is integrated via SDK in the application in which people enter things in which they assign, managers assign the to-dos to people and things like that. So that's the inbox application, a basket, we call it. And when this was finished, we had another request to help build a report about tax duties of large corporations. So we have another quasi-hierarchical structure, but now not scope of control, but ownership is the key. We helped these people build that report. I actually didn't see that report, but I helped them build it. And because it's simpler, I will reverse the order for you, and I'll first discuss this last report, and then discuss the basket report. So as I told you, we have a data warehouse based on database tables, SAS-based tables, also other things. And we have a VIYA environment with cache in-memory data. And we load data from the one to the other overnight in batch. A very important player in this story is, of course, the report designer. They visualize data in the reports they build, and then publish these reports, of course. They do so, of course, in SAS Visual Analytics based on VIYA. Another player, well, that is the report consumer, of course. They read the reports, of course, again, in SAS Visual Analytics, connected to VIYA. And as I explained, in the application, so in the case of the basket application, it's mainly through the business application via SDK. Advantages of such design, such an environment are, of course, that, well, of course, that reports can be multilingual. I could give another presentation about that because I'm quite disappointed. I'm on the one hand admiring the solution, on the other hand disappointed that it's only that, because it's missing a few things. You have good access control. The reports can be dynamic, and as we will explain, can be personalized. And this should be compared to the old situation where data miners are exploring the data in the data warehouse, and then mailing their Excel files, extracting into Excel and mailing the results around, which with the disadvantages that old versions of Excel files are circulating and proliferating towards people that shouldn't see them. And well, that's the environment. We'll dive a little bit into visual analytics. People interested in my presentation will most probably know what I tell now, that it is a low coding reporting environment in which you see your report. It's a little bit what you see is what you get, and you drag, for instance, graphs on your report. You say which you via the roles, you say which data should be used there, and a lot of other things. And the result, if you push the edit buttons to stop editing, you see the complete report. That has the look and feel as if a good web developer has been active, even if you don't have that skills. Now, specific, and that is in fact the reason why I can make dynamic reports this way, is the filtering. And filtering you should see as a cascade. So you have row level security, which determines which data you might see in any report. So if the row level security says you can't see that, you will not see that in any report. Next comes a filter on the CAS table within the report. So that determines which data you will see in that report, anyone will see in that report. Then there is, you can put controls on the report. If you're the report designer, you can put controls in the header, either of the report or of the tabs, the pages. Which you can yourself decide what you see and not see and don't see. Then you can, one object, for instance, a short list of categories can be used to filter another object, like the numbers per category, well, numbers per subcategory. Well, a lot of things can be done, and that is no. Well, object filter is actually that you say in this graph, I don't only want to see that kind of data, and then you have the dependencies, and the dependency is actually that you can, for instance, you have a bar chart. With categories, you click on one of the bars, and then in the list you see only the data about that category. And these are the filters you have a little bit. Well, I doubt if I'm complete, but you should understand the cascade of filtering. And then there are parameters. Parameters are a little bit an indirect way of linking objects to each other. Well, they can be used in fact, in many of these filters. And before we go, and we actually the gray things here are not in the following slides. They will be picked up later. So now let's go to, oh yeah. I should have put that. Sorry. I wanted to present you something and I forgot to log on. So So this is a report that that you can find as an example in Visual Analytics. So here you have the list of the data that you can use in this report. It's actually 2 tables. If you click here, you can say apply a filter to the data. And this one is not filtered, but so if you want to create a filter on it, you can just say season, and then you have operators. Comparison. And then you have, I want spring and fall and winter, but not summer. Okay, now our report will be changed and will not show the summer. So it's only, that was one of these filters, the first one on the report level. Another filter is then actually here you can activate the expand report control, and now you see here place to drag what they call controls. No, I should say look for objects, a button bar, and then you can put, you can assign roles here, and you can say my category is city. Well, that is not a good example. Let's take season, but actually that's not a good idea because this was already done here. So these buttons I put here are for the complete report. Buttons I put here are for the tab. So here we don't have any selections for the tab. Expand page controls, and then I can put anything here. Oh, it's and assign a role here, say with what we want to filter on. So it's easy as that to create these filters. So let's go back to here. So now we saw a few of these filters. So these filters are actually just point and click work. And now Now we go into the first example, and that is the exploring of the hierarchy of corporations. And that goes further than the standard out-of-the-box drill through we see in this environment in VIYA Visual Analytics, but also in the competitors' products. So if they show you, if the typical things they show you is you drill through from your corporation into the regions, into the divisions, into the shops. And that's all based on a hierarchical key or on a set of keys that represent the hierarchy of your own organization. Now, that is not what we need here. We have a structure of corporations that own corporations, that own companies, and the number of levels is undefined. So this typical drill through structure you see in all the examples they give you is not here. You have, in fact, somewhere a table that says which corporation is part of which corporation and which company, of course. And that's somewhere in your data warehouse. And to use that, you have a bill of materials problem, and you can use proc-bomb there. But anyway, somehow you'll end up with a corporations table, which says how who owns what, and then a table with the actual data, with the numbers and with whatever you want to report on. So to go back to our way of working with the data warehouse in SAS 9.4, you have a corporate structure table, you have a business data table, and you load these into CAS. Now, the corporate structure table, we created this way. So that is some identification data about the company. I choose an example, Coca-Cola, which has a lot of entities, which are then listed here. And then KBC Group is a financial institution here in Belgium. Well, actually, it's an international, but it's from Belgian origin. And as I told you, we are seeing it hierarchical. That means that we also have the bank and the insurance of KBC, each of which is in the list. And the entity list of KBC Group is just the mixture of the entity list of KBC Bank and KBC Insurance, plus, of course, the mother entity, KBC Bank itself, KBC Group itself. Then the other table is the entity. Is the entities with all the data in it. And now, what we show to the users is everything that's in orange here, in the orange part, but the black gray part is as such not shown to the user. It's a hidden column here, and here this is a table we just don't use except in a summary table. So if someone clicks on KBC Group, this person will see the total of every row here that is included in the list of entities part of KBC Group. That's how we work. Oh, I should have included the filter. So the filter is actually just the filter on this table, that is visible table, is actually just that the entity from which these numbers are part, these numbers are calculated, is part of this list. Now, for our basket application, this is not sufficient, because there people will not be able to select whose data they will see. We have to decide somehow what they will see. And the situation is as follows. Mr. Janssen might be an agent, so this person should see everything that's assigned to Mr. Janssens. Mrs. Dubois is a team lead and should see everything that's in her department. Then Mr. Mertens is director, should see a whole list of departments. Mr. Coles is an adjunct of Mr. Mertens, so he should see everything that Mr. Mertens see, because yeah, he assists him. And then there is Mrs. Johnson, who is actually combining responsibilities. So she will have 2 departments. So not a list of, not a range, but a list of departments, and she still has some files she's managing herself, so she should see that too. How could you do that theoretically? Well, you do that by within the environment manager, selecting the table and saying that for this table, Mr. Janssen can see the table, so can read information about the table and see the table, but not just as such. And well, all of these persons, you give some rights. And which rights do you give them? Well, that's behind this strange symbol. So if you click on this symbol, then you should specify what this person can see. So remember, this list of rights should be entered in each of these cells. Of course, you can't do this because we have thousands of agents, hundreds of managers. We will not keep track of who is responsible for what via this interface. You could probably automate setting these rules, but we went another way, and that is with 2 tables again. So we created of course, we have a basket table with what is in each person's basket. But then before we load that, we load a basket users table, and the basket users table has the login of the person and a list of everything this person manages. We extract that from our Active Directory, which is fed by LDAP, and this basket user table within VIYA, we put row level security on this table. And what is the row level security here? Well, your user ID should be your user ID with which you logged on. So that's one row level security rule, the same for everyone. And the rest is done via filtering on the basket table using the basket users table. There's still one more table involved in the report, and that's actually an anonymized copy of the basket, which is then used for benchmarking. But that is less relevant here. But then, how do you filter baskets using the basket user data? Well, then we have to explain what parameters are. Parameters are actually data items, just like your table. You remember you have on the left-hand side, you had these the data you are viewing. So this report includes 2 tables, and these are the columns you see in this table. In the other table, you see other columns. But then there are a few things. There are no parameters here. Yes, there is one parameter, property param. So this one, you see it, whatever table I take here, it's not in a table. So property parameter is here, it's not in a table. So it's a data item that occurs once, because you don't have the concept of rows there. If it's not in the table, you don't have rows. And so you can assign a value to it. And you can assign a value to it by giving it that role of parameter for control, for instance. How do we do it? Well, we put a drop-down list somewhere on the report, a drop-down list for UID. And we link that, so we have that as role category for that drop-down list. We have the UID. And as role parameter, we have the we assign it to parameter UID. And we have another drop-down list for managers list, which we also link to a parameter. So now, because the data is the data we see from basket users is filtered through row level security, we only will see the UID of the person editing using the report, and the managers list of the person using the report in these drop-down lists. So they are actually useful for the person himself, because he can't change anything. So we hide them. We put them in a precision container, which we size down to 1 pixel. So the people don't know that it's on the report, but it is there. And then on the basket table, we put a filter which says that that everyone will only see in the report what is assigned to the parameter PUID, or for which the error. This is wrong. the department, of course. Oh. So the managers list should contain the department to which it belongs. So actually we link it to one table to the other via the parameters. So if we now look to a little bit to it a little bit more specific. In this case, we still have the business data coming from the data warehouse. The structure table actually comes from Active Directory and is also loaded to CAS. And then, so an agent will see what is assigned to himself. A manager will see what is managed by her. An adjunct of a manager will see what is managed by the manager. The user scope table, well, user scope, this is actually the basket user table. Has two columns, UID and manage the list of what this person is managing. So for instance, Janssen is not managing anything. He will see only his own things that are assigned to him. Dubois is managing one department. Mertens is managing a range. So we indicate that by putting something ending on 2 zeros in the list of what this person is managing. And so that is translated to the range. And Johnson is actually managing multiple things. Row level security will select your own row here. So that's the only thing that will be used in your report behind the scenes, which will then determine the value of the parameters, which will then determine the filtering on dossier. So your basket application, your basket table is then filtered this way. You will see everything that is assigned to you. And here I have the same error. So manage, yep. Not going to correct it. So managers list contains the department of the data line, or managers list contains this, well, yeah, the department with the last two digits changed to 0. So that's the way to handle these ranges. For Johnson, he will see everything for which the department is in his list, so he'll see that. So that's a quite flexible thing. The reality is complexer than this because we have different types of ranges. That is how it works. Then I promised you something about SDK. So we wanted to include this report in the business application. So our VIYA within the business application. And SAS instructed us to just copy the link to the report into the SDK. So that's what we did. And while in our Visual Analytics environment, row level security was applied to basket users. The hidden controls were adjusted. And then the basket basket was filtered to the scope, right? Filtered based on the parameters, using resulting in everybody seeing what is in scope for this person. If we did that via the SDK, it didn't work. Well, why didn't it work? What we saw was that you saw exactly the same thing as the developer of the report had saved. And what was happening? So row level security was indeed applied to basket users. But the hidden controls were not adjusted because they only reacted to the content of the drop-down lists only reacted to user edits. They did not react to the row level security, to what you could see. And then of course, the filtering on basket was not applied either. We discussed this with SAS, and they discovered where the problem was, and said us, well, sorry, but you'll have to use a workaround. You'll have to edit the XML generated by VIYA. And for that, you must press Ctrl-Alt-B, and then you can, with a few, after some looking up, you could find the default value for your PID, for your parameter, and then you should change this default value into something more dynamic. And so that was what that was the story. So that is the workaround with which our developers are currently living. And then when I finished this slide, I asked something at the people that helped me discovering this, and they said, "Oh, by now we have a hot fix, so you don't need this anymore." So that's it. So you'll most probably not see this bug anymore. And now it's time for questions.
We a little bit out of time, 5 minutes overdue. Has anyone got any questions? You could just unmute yourself and ask the question, or not. Well, I think given that we overdue, I would suggest we finish here. We'll make sure that first of all, thank you very much for the presentation, for a lot of very detailed. I mentioned before the recording, our experience of implementing SAS VIYA and SDK was exactly the same. It does have bugs and workarounds and other types of issues have to be done. And thank you very much for the presentation.
Okay, I'm going to click twice again. One to show you again the logo of my employer, and to say that if you have questions, you could use LinkedIn. And if it's complex, just put them on Stack Overflow first, so that not only others can answer it, but also it helps you to prepare the question well. And last but not least, there are a few people that should have more credits for this applications than I have, 2 of whom are employees of my customer. So Federal Public Service of Finance, Wouter Bollard and Walter de Wit, and 3 of whom are SAS consultants, Mikey Miller, Sebastian Schaap, and Thomas Korvelijn. That's it.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. Again, thank you very much for finding the time, for everyone else for attending the presentation, Dirk, especially to you for preparing the presentation and sharing it with us. So it's very much insightful. Like I mentioned, we'll save the recording, we'll publish it on the usual YouTube and share it in a meetup. And Valeria also very kindly posted a link. We have the next webinar is going to be on the 7th of July, a return, but part 2 by Chris. And it's going to be about CAS. If someone attended the previous presentation, it's going to be more detailed, jump into CAS L actions, which is relevant to what you mentioned here, Dirk, as well, because it's about actions on processing and manipulating data in CAS. So on that note, thank you very much.